Welcome to the Smart Thinking Podcast. This is my dad, Ted.
Welcome to the Smart Thinking Podcast. I'm your host, Ted Knightsky. There's a lot of talk about well-being and mental fitness in the workplace and life, and too many times it goes undefined. As a result, we vary in what workplace well-being means, and that can create a lack of clarity. We get a little something called frustration and then potentially conflict because we're all talking about well-being, but nobody knows what it means. Which is why, on this episode, I want to do some smart thinking around well-being and the mindsets to support ourselves and others. Life is a fun journey, and it moves forward each day. As a result of the simple fact that it never stops moving, we need to learn skills and create common languages to advocate for ourselves while supporting others. Which is why today we're going to learn about 5 considerations when supporting our individual well-being and those of others. All of that while focusing on a uniformed approach, which is why we're going to work today to make sure that we can set the tone and stage for ourselves and our own well-being as well as others. Too often, we are told to focus on our well-being, but no one explains what that is or gives us the permissions we need in order to do so. This week, I was fortunate to be working with a premier healthcare organization here in the state of Wisconsin, and I watched their CEO give permissions to people so that they could focus on their own well-being. And as he was speaking about this and making sure they understood that it was not just a permission, but an expectation, I looked to the audience and saw people. They looked like they felt seen and heard, and they were honored. And that's when I realized we need to work to make sure that we are creating this in every organization and amongst everyone. Key there was acknowledgement and permissions. People need to understand what they can and can't do. We need to explain what we should and shouldn't do. And we need to have a system in place so that people can explain away feelings in a way that is both self-empathetic and respectful, while others are able to do the same amongst them. A cultural language which allows us to move forward. The only way to move forward, however, is to truly understand oneself. Or as Socrates has said, to know thyself is the beginning of wisdom. And he also said, the unexamined life is not worth living. And by the way, he said that 2,400 years ago. Why haven't we figured this out yet? Okay, now, before I try to figure this all out with you, let's remember a few things. First, we are leaders, and a leader is anyone who has influence over another person, making every one of us every day leaders amongst everyone we're around, because everybody's watching, and everybody's repeating, and everybody's learning from our actions and the actions of others. We are also followers, people who understand the mission and work hard to collaboratively design positive outcomes together, that we hold ourselves accountable, that we focus on our own engagement, and we're resilient through it all. And we do that by being empathetic. Wondering what would it be like to be the people in front of me right now? What would they need if I were them? And finally, reflecting each day, asking myself, what went well and what would I change so that I can do better for others tomorrow? And we do that with a buffalo mindset because there's no storm too big so that we cannot run through it. All right, the 5 areas to increase our understanding of our own wellness. And, well, it all comes from this great piece from David Rock. David Rock is a neuroscientist, and he created something called the SCARF model. It's a framework that explains how we are motivated by social needs based on neuroscience. And the acronym stands for status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness, which represents 5 social domains that can either activate a threat response for us or a reward response in our brains. And by understanding these 5 domains, we can better influence and collaborate with others by minimizing threats in the workplace and our lives and maximizing the rewards of being able to work together. And the key here is activating threats or rewards. Key because that's what's going to keep us mentally healthier and support our own well-being. Okay, now, as always, a quick story. A few years ago, I was invited to a meeting. Invited to a meeting. Who says that? Anyways, I was heading into a meeting a few years ago, and I was waiting in the lobby of this business. I sat down as I was waiting, and I began reading a Time magazine, and the team I was meeting with was running a little bit late. I know this because I could see them in the glass building and room they were in as they were sitting around the conference table. So as I was sitting there, a woman leaned onto a counter where the administrative assistant was working as she walked up frantically and said, "I don't know how much more of this I can take." And the administrative assistant looked over at me, and I pretended to be enthralled with the Time magazine article on the future of electric cars or something. Who knows what I was reading? Anyways, I observed something at this point, and then I began to listen to something I had never heard of before. The administrative assistant said to the woman, "Which trigger is this pulling for you?" The woman said, "Listen, I'm just pissed." And the administrative assistant, who had clearly been part of some empowering training, said, "Yeah, you're pissed, but where's it coming from?" I sat there like I was watching Mr. Miyagi and Daniel LaRusso and the Karate Kid exchanging wisdom. Anyway, the next thing I know, the upset executive is being coached through her emotions by the administrative assistant, and I watch as the two of them have a conversation using the same language and truly engaging in each other as they were looking for the root of her frustration. I put down the Time magazine and grabbed another one and continued to pretend to be interested in whatever the magazine was that I was reading. However, I was deeply curious about what was going on and eavesdropping at a professional level. Just then, a door opened and the people I was waiting to meet with pulled me into the meeting. As I walked by, I watched as the two were having a discussion using a common language and clearly not interested in their organizational hierarchy because the administrative assistant was coaching an executive and they were intentionally discussing what was happening. It was like a well-being coaching session, and it was simple and spontaneous. I walked into the meeting and sat down so that I could still see them because I was in a giant glass room, and that allowed me to continue to see the two interacting. All I wanted was for the meeting to end so I could get out there and figure out what was going on. I kept thinking about how quickly the frustration moved to the two of them seeking awareness of what was happening, why it was happening, and what to do about it. However, I had no idea what type of Hogwarts-level magic was taking place out there. They both seemed under a spell, and I could see the energy re-entering the frustrated person's body. Just her whole demeanor changed. After about 15 minutes, the two of them hugged, smiled, and moved back into their day. After too long of me sitting in this meeting, it ended, and the administrative assistant was back at her desk. As we were all walking out and saying our goodbyes, I walked out of the meeting room and I lingered until all of the other participants walked away. I think I actually bent down and retied my shoes, pretending that I needed to do that. And that's when I sprung up and I walked to the assistant and asked, "Can I talk to you real quickly?" She was very polite, and I remember she just had a genuine warmth about her. I think we were close to the same age, and based upon all of the great pictures in her cubicle with photos of her loved ones and her interests, I just kind of got a good feeling about her because she had a great energy. I said, "I couldn't help but notice the frustrated colleague that came to your area here and how you two interacted." She was like, "Yeah, she was pretty energized." I love that she referred to her anger and frustration in terms of energy, because in the end, we are where we put our energy. She said, "I was using the scarf to figure out what was going on." I looked at her and thought, "I didn't see a scarf on you. What are you talking about?" And I was like, "It's not really cold." And then I thought, "But a scarf in winter, whew, that is the best. So warm." Okay, sorry. I said, "What is scarf?" She said, "It is our way of determining what is actually setting us off." She explained there are 5 different ways that we either feel in control or not in control. I started writing this down, and then the phone rang, and she did the classic holding up of a finger and saying, "I'll be right back." However, that set in motion a commotion, and she couldn't return to our conversation. So I went home and I researched the living daylights out of scarf, and now we're going to review what it is, why it's impactful, and how we need to bring this into our mindsets, no matter what we do. Because if you're a classroom teacher, this will bring you insight on every level of your day, from classroom management of your students to collegial conversations to the reactions of parents and leaders. It will make you be in a position of clarity. And if we can get a lot of people talking about it, and we can all take the assessment, well, then we can all learn from it, grow from it, and go through our storms. Because if you are in a role anywhere in life around others, this will help you a ton, especially if you can get others to understand and share these neurologically based principles to help yourself and others. You see, every culture that you work in, live in, or play in needs to understand 2 basic things in order for us to be ourselves. The first is, what is our status? What's our status in any given situation? And then in that situation, what's the structure? In other words, what's my role in here and how are others seeing me? And what are the rules to this culture, group, or team? In the absence of those two things, things can get really weird. Yeah, I know weird is beautiful, but not a good way to feel when we are in any given situation. Let's figure out what it is we are feeling when we are getting frustrated in work or life in specifics or certain situations. Kind of like when we feel out of control or like we're on the verge. All right, so just a quick review here. What is the SCARF model? Well, it's a neuroscience-based application of 5 things: an understanding of our status, the certainty we face, the autonomy we have, the relatedness in the situation, and the perception of fairness, which triggers one of 2 things: either a threat response or a reward response, and always in our brain. And the key here is to understand that these 5 things can activate either a feeling of being threatened or a reward. So what do we have to do here? Well, we have to understand a few things. We have to understand that this is a way that we can perceive the world in which we live, and it will allow us to navigate. So what is status? Well, status is something to pay very close attention to, because people view status and in a way that can be very frustrating to those of us who are trying to navigate with and for them. But really what it is it refers to an individual's relative importance to others and their sense of self-worth within a group. Threats to status can include negative feedback, lack of recognition, or being overlooked for opportunities. People are very concerned about their status, especially understanding where they are with you in any given situation. Status is really, really important in classrooms, in boardrooms, and in hallways. In the classroom, it can lead to a great feeling of threat for a student. If they don't know where they stand, or if they perceive they stand in a negative light, they're going to work to get out of that. And sometimes by being more challenging. Certainty. Okay, so SCARF. SC. Certainty. Certainty deals with the ability to predict the future and understand what to expect in any given situation. Ambiguity and uncertainty can trigger a threat response, while clarity and predictability can lead to a reward response. So the more people understand the rules of the game, the SOPs, what's expected of them, the better off they'll be. As I'm going through the SCARF model, I want you to think about if you use engagement surveys or if you use Clifton Strengths or other strengths tools, because it all ties together really, really well. And your approach using either the engagement tools or the Q12 engagement tool, or using strength-based approaches to leadership, is certainty as a driver. It is a significant driver for people's success, especially their well-being and how they feel. Autonomy. Autonomy encompasses the sense of control over one's own decisions and actions. Feeling micromanaged or lacking in control can trigger a threat response, while having autonomy can be motivating. Many times people in different positions in organizations and even your own household, when they feel like they got the short end of the stick, or nobody was asking them, or they lost control of what they thought they had control over, well, that can really create a triggered threat response. And what we need to do instead is ask them, what did you think you had control over, and how can I help you through this situation? Or what lane did I step into that you believed was yours? Relatedness. This concerns the feeling of safety and belonging within a group. Social isolation or exclusion can be perceived as a real threat. And if you feel like you're being pushed out, or other people are talking about you, or making decisions without your input, that can really trigger a lot of different people and support a negative feeling of personal well-being. While strong connections and a sense of community can be very rewarding, feeling a part of it, being leaned into, being supported, or being asked to support others. Now, fairness. This is the one that this word drives me crazy, because fairness is a perception, and that's why it has to be accounted for, because of the perception. Fairness relates to the perception of fair treatment and equitable distribution of resources and opportunities. Perceived unfairness can trigger a strong threat response. Payroll, gifts, opportunities, all can trigger a very strong threat response if people perceive that they were overlooked or someone got something that they too deserved. So the opportunity here is to have the conversations, make sure there's clarity, and people know exactly what the rules of the game are. Because people with a sense of justice and equity can be very, very motivated because they are motivating around others. We need to understand this for ourselves and others. So I have a few steps for you. When you engage the SCARF model, understanding those 5 different key elements of how people feel in any given situation, watching so that you do not negatively trigger them, instead you activate them, well, there's a few things you need to do. And these are all from one perspective. What do we do if we trigger people, and how do we help their well-being? Well, the first thing we need to do is pause and notice the threat signal. Before responding to somebody, take 5 to 10 seconds to ask yourself, which scarf domain might be threatened right now for this person? This shift alone reduces your own reactive behavior. Common triggers, again, status, feeling dismissed or undervalued, certainty, not knowing what will happen, autonomy, feeling a lack of control, relatedness, feeling excluded or misunderstood, and fairness, perceiving unequal treatment. When somebody gets upset with you and you feel and see them getting triggered, you should ask yourself, through those 5, which is the one that is potentially being triggered right now. The second thing is name the domain and then normalize your reaction to it. Gently reframe the situation with the scarf lens, either internally or aloud for them. Here's why I think this is so powerful. I watched it happen with that administrative assistant and executive. She just named it and she normalized the reaction, and then they moved to action. Examples of this to help name the domain and normalize reaction is to say things like, it makes sense, this feels frustrating. There's been a lot of uncertainty. Anyone would feel off if their autonomy felt limited. This validates people's responses and reduces emotional intensity as we're moving forward. Number 3, shift to curiosity. Empathy activation. Use curiosity to re-engage the prefrontal cortex and foster connection. Yeah, I just said prefrontal cortex because, I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night, so now I'm a neuroscientist. Anyways, here's questions you can ask. If it's status, what part of your expertise feels overlooked right now? If it's certainty, what information would help you feel clearer? If it's autonomy, where would you like more say in the next steps? Relatedness, how can we make sure you feel included here? And fairness, what feels inconsistent or unfair from your perspective? And then we listen without interruption. That's critical. The fourth thing we do is we offer a regulating gesture for the threat domain. Respond with an action that lifts the threatened scarf area, like status, affirm contribution, highlight strengths, ask for input. Certainty, provide timelines, expectations, or next steps. Autonomy, provide choices or flexibility. Relatedness, express openness, share your intention, create connection. And fairness, increase transparency, explain reasoning, and clarify process. Now, friends, if you don't know this, each week I also publish a blog at the CISA6.org website where you can find all of this typed out and written out for you, and you can grab it from there. Because this is really, really important, especially this step right here when you coach through SCARF. This reduces the threat state, and then it restores psychological safety. 2 more things. Co-create a path forward. Work together, collaborate, turn shared understanding into collaborative action. Use with, not to type of language. Let's do this together, with each other, never to them. Like this. Here's what it sounds like. Let's figure out next steps together. What feels like a manageable first move? How can we make this process feel more fair, clear, inclusive? That creates shared ownership, increases autonomy, certainty, and fairness simultaneously. It also addresses the 2 things from the top of the podcast. Where do I stand in this situation? What's my status? And what are the rules? And then we get them out there and we build them together. And finally, close with well-being reinforcement. Remember, the single greatest way to change another person's behavior is to first change your own, and the second is through positive reinforcement. So when we close it out, highlight the things that are going well, the decisions that they made that were good, and end with the intention in a way that helps their nervous system settle. Listen, you've all had somebody, quote unquote, piss you off. But how did you act? How did you respond? And as the woman said, what energy did you bring? Because when you close out with well-being reinforcement, it's options like creating appreciation of their effort, not just their outcomes. Brief check-ins. How are you feeling now about this? And acknowledging the emotional shift. I see you're kind of in a better spot. Even helping people just reset through exercising their breath. Techniques like 4 corners breathing. Anything. Bring anything to the table to help people manage and work through these different triggers that are impacting their well-being. Finally, I need you to learn your domains. Yeah, you. I'm talking to you. Here's why. When you understand your domains, these 5, and where they fall for you, and which ones are most likely to trigger you, you will begin to increase your own awareness, support your own well-being, and recognize within yourself that I know this might tick me off. So where do you go or what do you do? Well, first of all, just go online and Google scarf assessments. There's a bunch of them. And take one. Then have others take it. And when you're all done, if you know your Clifton strengths, overlay them against that. And once you've built this all out, now you'll have a language that gives permissions, predictability, and allows you and everybody else to have the ability to help people navigate when they're, well, as we said before, pissed off or triggered. What's really cool about the online assessments is it takes status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness, and it puts it into a graph that just very clearly demonstrates to you what will make you upset and where you have to focus your time, energy, and effort. And what I love about it, because I'm a big Clifton Strengths person, is I was able to overlay mine, and I had 2 areas of status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness that kind of, well, they were a little bigger in the pie graph than the rest of them. The first was status. I really personally need to kind of understand what is my role in every room I'm in. And if I don't, I tend to withdraw and get pretty quiet. I don't get angry or upset, and I don't lash out. But if I don't really know my role or what my job is in the room, I tend to become a little introverted. And this helped me see that what was happening was I just needed to have the courage to step up and ask, hey, what's my job in here? And the other one was certainty. I really personally need to know with certainty what's going on, what are the rules, and all of those different pieces. So this was really, really helpful for me. And then I laid my strengths against it. And what I found was, my strengths supported the 3 areas that I was really strong in: autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And the 2 areas that tended to trigger me, that impact my well-being, well, they also happened to be some of my soft strengths, or, well, the areas between 25 and 34. It was a very cool exercise. Now, never mess with neuroscience. The research is clear. Help people understand their scarf. Make sure they understand their status, their certainty, their autonomy, their relatedness, and their fairness. And once we have a language around this, we can all help each other more effectively and successfully be empowered and charge into the storms that we are all facing. So let's do some smart thinking. Describe how you could apply the SCARF model to lead others. List your SCARF results and analyze the impact of where you fall with those 5 domains and the triggers that they pull. And last, list the people in your life that would benefit from understanding how their SCARF impacts their well-being. That's it. That's the Smart Thinking Podcast. Hey, as always, thank you so much for listening, and please make sure to rate this episode and share it with others. And I really, really want you to look up the SCARF model and take the assessment so that you have a good understanding of how to navigate this with others and for others, but most importantly, for yourself. If you can, especially if you're on iTunes, go in there and rate and share this episode for me, please, to help others learn, grow, and go together. And finally, thank you to the Well Pennies and Golden Bear Studios in Des Moines, Iowa, for letting us use their great music to help us end every one of these episodes upbeat. Okay, closing out. Working with people should not be complicated, but complications come from our inability to navigate all these different needs of others. SCARF allows us to see what's happening in a new way, what's happening to you and what's happening to me. And when I say what is happening, I mean not to others, but within ourselves as well. Why is this making me nervous? Why am I frustrated? Why am I upset? Why am I angry at this? This doesn't feel like it should be that big of a deal. When you hear yourself saying that, you need to go back into your mental Rolodex and ask yourself, which of the scarves is this impacting? What needs are being missed for me in this situation? Understanding the SCARF model allows us to better understand ourselves. Like Socrates pointed out 2 millennia ago? I don't know, you figure it out. We need to better grip our current reality. And I would suggest that as a result of that, we can get a better grip on what others will need in any given situation, which in most of those situations is likely going to be needing you. Well-being, well, it also begins with you. And then activating and advocating ideas for and with others, especially if you have a clear understanding of what needs to occur in order for others to find their best self in any given situation. And on top of that, the SCARF model gives you an ability to collaboratively diagnose what's going on for others so that you can support the situation they are in, or reverse it. We are all in that situation and what we are all facing, and figuring out what I need and you need in those specific moments so we can figure out Is this because I have no autonomy? Is this because I don't perceive this as fair? Why is this emotional response happening within me? And then having a partner or other people within your organization to be able to talk about it and move to solutions. No matter what, the more we can recognize how to help ourselves, the more we can recognize when we need to run next to or behind someone else to support their journey into whatever storms they are facing. Oh, a little extra. This song just seems like it would fit a scarf model conversation.
It's cold and terrible weather, but I feel as light as a feather. Snowed in the weekend next to you.
Bourbon and honey together, I can't think of anything better. Snowed in the weekend next to you. Kokomo just doesn't cut it. Maui's nice in summer, but it's coziest when it's snowed in next to you. Dancing to Louie and Ella, no shoes, you're my Cinderella. Snowed in the weekend next to you. This time you know I can tell her, darling, you're my kind of fella. Snowed in the weekend next to you. Kokomo just doesn't cut it. Maui's nice in summer, but it's coziest when it's snowed in next to you. You and I spent winter dancing, held up in the cold romance, and snowed in for the weekend here with you. Kokomo just doesn't cut it. Maui's nice in summer, but it's coziest when it's snowed in next to you. You and I spent winter dancing, held up in the cold romance, and snowed in for the weekend here with you.